This class is about how we take a focusing orientation and facilitate groups with it. Now, those groups may not be therapy groups. Those groups may be meditation groups, focusing groups, whatever people are doing with the focusing and the group work. And it's an encouragement for people to do groups. And this is dawning on me more and more. It's my way of proposing a particular integration of focusing and group work. Now, that could be used in therapy, that could be used in political work and activism. It could be used on the PTA meetings in the schools, whatever way we are, and I could call us maybe focusing professionals, whichever way we as focusing professionals want to contribute not only to our clients, but also to the world. So it goes beyond the therapy group. But the reason that I say it, it's just a very beginning introduction, because each of those things needs to be a course. But I'd like to give you, by the end of this 6 sessions, a sense of the feel of a group and a sense of how what we know about focusing can be translated into larger systems. It complexifies, and focusing is already, the philosophy of the implicit is already a philosophy of complexity. So to take this philosophy and see how we apply it to a very complex system of systems within systems, but actually live it in some kind of way or get a taste for living it, is a very big job. And I'm just giving you a little nugget of that. In the person-centered rhythm that Jean talks about, and we're going to be going into Rogers and encounter groups today. But Jean talks about the rhythm of how the client will say something, and then the therapist will get the feel of it, the crux of it, and say it, and then the client will correct it, and the therapist will take that correction and say that, but carrying it forward with the real feel of it. And then the client will say, yes. And there'll be that sigh that allows for a pause. And then where the person takes it will be a deeper step. Do you remember when Jean talks about that? In a group, how does that rhythm change? So Liz and I had the experience of, she said something, I said something, and then she said yes, and that was that rhythm. And then there was yes. But in a group, try to picture this now. Someone says something, someone is acknowledging, somebody else in the group is acknowledging it in some way and saying their thing, which in Jean's way of being wouldn't be the right thing to say something different, but there'll be something in that that is referring to what this person said. And then someone else is, something forms inside them implicitly, and they say something. And then someone else says something. And then someone says, but I want to go back to what so-and-so said. There's this thing dangling for me there. And then someone will say, I'm so touched by what you just did there, and how you did that. And the person will say, yes, I really appreciated that. And then there'll be this pause, maybe for a minute. And if you can picture that, it's the same kind of rhythm in a way as Jean was talking about from Carl Rogers, but it's complexified a millionfold. And what I would like to be able to give you a taste of in this course would be to recognize that complexity. And you won't be able in 6 sessions to track that, or maybe none of us ever can explicitly. Maybe we touch into that and touch back, but to have a feel for it, that we're building something, and that this complex organism of the group is being furthered and being strengthened and being clarified and being enlivened in all of these ways. And we can look back and say, oh, I'm different after this. But maybe we can't say exactly what made us different. I feel better after this group session. A lot of people will say, and sometimes people say, I feel worse, but many times people will say, oh, I feel better. Where we're going today on this journey is to look at the essential, from my point of view. Everything is, of course, from my point of view, and I want your points of view to make this a rich stew. But from my point of view, the essential ingredients of focusing are, number one, and see if you could sort of take these in as I say it, give them a chance, see if you agree. The first one would be the focusing attitude. And that is an attitude of openness to everything. It's like, oh, well, what is this? Oh, a mass murderer at my door. Not killing me, because I wouldn't be focusing then, but a mass murderer who is being referred to me. Oh, what will that bring? It's this openness to everything, and we can't completely embody that, but that's what we want. And receptivity and curiosity and inclusion and hunger for the richness of difference. That would be my version of the focusing attitude. And when we think about that in a group, when we're facilitating a group, we want ourselves and we want the group to have this openness to difference. Not, oh, this is annoying. I mean, it can be annoying, but it's not that nothing is annoying. It's annoying, but then you go deeper in the focusing attitude to, oh, it's annoying. What is it? What is that? Why am I annoyed? How, you know, how does this appear in society? What could we call this? What is, whatever it is, we go further than the annoyance. And the wanting to further something rather than to exclude it. That's the focusing attitude in a group. And the struggle to meet difference, to meet what's strange to us or what we're not used to, or a different culture, and every person is a different culture, and to see what it has to offer. So that is my version of the focusing attitude. The second thing is the desire to listen deeply, not just to what is being said, like your aboutism, but to where the person is coming from, the felt meaning that hasn't quite been said yet, what the person is trying to get at, the deeper point. And we have our feelers out for that. And trying to carry it forward with our response, to unfold it. And that value of sort of keeping track, in a sense, of where we're going, from this to this to this, in those little steps that we think about in focusing, of deepening. So we're paying attention to that. So, for example, in our class so far, we were talking about, oh, we're halfway done, and I'd love you to get a taste for what my version of the integration of focusing into group work, whatever kind of groups. And then we brought in this part of the focusing attitude that is about the embracing of difference and of everything, and curiosity. And Cassell talked about the aboutism in Rogers, and then we talked about, in focusing, the deep listening, and then now we're talking about the sort of keeping track that that we're doing now, and the little steps of deepening. And if we think about those sort of basic, and you may have a different way of parsing them, but those basic elements of focusing and bringing them to any kind of group process, the group process is going to change fundamentally. If you brought that to we're having meetings about saving our supermarket in the in our neighborhood that NYU wants to take over. So if I were to bring those principles to that kind of a neighborhood meeting, it would change the meeting. If not only if I'm the facilitator, but even as a member, when you change the dance, you change the dynamic. So we're going to talk about today how we can integrate those basic elements of focusing into group work. Okay, so now we're going to come back to that. And I want to say my second point, which is that I've become very excited about something that I want to share with you. It came to me in watching these videos of Carl Rogers encounter groups, that Carl Rogers is the father of FOT, and Jean really modeled his way of doing therapy after Carl, and elaborated it and deepened it and philosophicalized it, but still kept to that same basic rhythm. And then Carl Rogers went on this whole other journey of developing encounter groups, and he worked with like 2,000 people at a time. And I remember his talking about, I was in a group with Carl Rogers, an encounter group for a short time. I mean, it wasn't a long encounter group, but his talking about how we, and I always love this, how we are having a very hard time with apartheid in South Africa. He included himself in the whole issue, not those people in South Africa are having a hard time, but we, this is us. And he brought that empathic understanding into a global sphere, and experimented with groups, with not only the frame of therapy, but what happens when we go beyond the frame of the dyad, the partnership, to the group. And Jean did not follow there at all. I think most of you have seen his video that's on YouTube about hating groups. The only kind of group he liked was the group where there was room for people to ask, well, what do you really mean by that? Right? So I'm excited about how we can pick up the strand that Jean left there back in the 70s, and we can contemporize it. And what will that look like if we take the work of Carl Rogers, and the contemporary version, I believe, is circling. So I'd love your opinion about that. I think, and I'd love your opinion, that authentic relating groups and circling groups are a contemporary version of encounter groups. And I'm interested in, if we picked up where Carl left off, what kind of group do we have? And I think I'm recognizing that's what I'm interested in developing. And what I would love is, and I'm sharing my dream with you, is if force groups or whatever you would want to call focusing oriented groups could have the impact on our societies that consciousness raising groups had in the 70s. Many of you, the older of you, probably remember the amazing impact that consciousness raising groups had on the whole society. That I remember the experience so clearly of being in a circle of women that I didn't know, and someone bringing up a difficult image like self-esteem and looking attractive. And then each of us were supposed to talk about how that was for us. And then we would, as a group, talk about, well, what does the society have to do with that? How is the society contributing to those problems? And it was so invigorating. We would say, oh my goodness, all the advertisements are of these little skinny women, and I'm not like that. And we would go on, and we would say, oh, it's not my problem. We would end, it's not like I have the wrong kind of body and I'm unattractive. It's that this is, they're trying to sell us products by saying this is the only kind of body you can have. So what if focusing could have the impact on group life that the encounter groups and the CR groups had in that crisis in the 70s? So that's what I would like us to sort of investigate today, what that would look like, and how a focusing oriented group would be the same and different from an encounter group. And we're going to look at this little video together of an encounter group, and then sort of see ourselves what we think about how a focusing orientation might change it. What I would like from you, now here's where the rubber meets the road. Does everybody know that metaphor? I think so. Okay. I would like you for this course to each of you get together a group of friends or colleagues or neighbors or anybody that you, focusing partners. I'm sorry, Liz, I'm going to invite you. You don't have to do it, but I think you would get a lot from this. Get together a group. You could start it with a dinner party or going out for drinks or something, but invite people as part of your training here, because I do want you to take one step or two steps in terms of being able to facilitate these kinds of groups. Invite 4 or 5 up to 10 people, 8 people. I think 8 people is supposed to be the best number, but you might want to start with 5 people. And invite them to be a group and to meet on a regular basis from now until the end of the course. That would be 12 weeks, I think, or something like that. But let's say it takes you 2 weeks to get it together. So it would be 10 sessions. And in this 10 sessions, you would be explaining that you're in training, you're taking a training course about facilitating, and you want to see just what happens if you get to know each other, with the idea of understanding more about how people can connect in a group. Just very simple. They don't have to know focusing, but see what happens and see what you learn from that. You're not having people pay you. You're not saying you're an expert in group, facilitation. But you're trying an experiment. And I'd like you to let me know if you're willing to do this. And I think it will be a wonderful experience for you. And you'll learn much more from that than you will from anything that I say. But I learned more about being a therapist from those groups. This was when I was a young person, than I did in all of my training. And a lot of my facilitation comes from the experience of being in those groups. And they weren't like that. They weren't breaking down people's defenses, but they also didn't have that basic focusing attitude as a pervasive way that the group operated either. Let's see if we could imagine, if we're talking about, you know, a focusing oriented group,
It'd be different to me.
if we could imagine how it would be different.
Mhm.
First of all, you know, I think what several of you have said is there's a feeling of sort of there's a right way to be. And at that time, Jim, you had said something about to me about there was the ethos of the true self and the false self, and
Right.
putting aside your masks. And that was very important to Carl Rogers, and very important in that time. It was, I mean, if we think of an evolutionary process, the 70s was an amazingly fertile time from my point of view of seeding all of these liberation groups. And it was a very, very new thing at that time, coming out of the 50s and then the 60s, to say, I don't want to fit into society. I want to be my true self. And people were challenging each other and confronting each other about being their true self. But I think from our generation time, we look back and say, well, that idea of a true self was maybe that snapshot of what this group of people thought was a true self. And so I'm wondering, well, if we took our contemporary understanding, at least from a focusing point of view, of really respecting and honoring and seeing the seeds of furthering in everything, how would you have responded as a facilitator, since now you're all going to be facilitators after today, when that young woman said that she just lights up if anybody compliments her, and that she's so attached to her cat because she can't give the affection to her husband? What might you have said there if you were going to respond in a focusing oriented way? There's no wrong answer, so it's not a test. We all might have different answers, but how would you respond?
Well,
One of the things that I think is very important in a focusing orientation of facilitating is really making a relaxed space for silences, so that people don't have to fight to get a word in, and they have room to sort of settle with something and see what comes. And so I would invite you to do that, Liz, just to relax with the silence. And there's nothing to assure yourself, there's nothing wrong here.
You
Someone is
don't think people are too inhibited to speak up, and that's why they're not speaking? They're waiting, they're fulminating, or whatever that word is.
they may be too inhibited, they may be waiting, but the waiting is a way of gathering their strength or their thoughts together to be able to speak. The waiting isn't just like somebody else, and maybe it is, somebody else should do it. But then if there's a pause and it goes on, then somebody will say, well, I really want to say that. And they have room to find it. I remember Jean saying to me, there are the blue-eyed people and the brown-eyed people, and the brown-eyed people are full of their feelings and have trouble containing their feelings. And the blue-eyed people are the people, I don't know why he chose these, except the blue-eyed people can't find their feelings and they need space. to look for them. And the group facilitation needs to make it all okay and relaxed to find that space, to find the feelings, and to make the people that are full of their feelings and can't contain their feelings feel at home also. So since the time is really going, let's be the group. We're going to be, for the next 20 minutes, the encounter group, as contemporized by the philosophy of the implicit and the guidelines of focusing. And let's take it up from right where we are. And I'll start. And who would keep time for us? I think we'll do 15 minutes, so we'll have a little time to speak about it.
There are so many people here are just talking about safety and silence, and for me it's so different. To me, when someone is silent, particularly after I've spoken, it has to do with secret feelings. That silence for me is secrets. I want to shake the secrets out of people.
I love that term. It's like you've created a term, Liz. Secret silence. It occurs to me that if we think about a focusing oriented group as being a way of really talking genuinely across difference, that we're doing that. We're talking across the difference of the people who are fast and the people who process slowly, the people who are threatened by silence and the people who need silence. And in the service of not having group think, we don't want to think that as a group that there's a right way, that there needs to be room for all the different ways of processing. Is that right? I think one of the characteristics for me of a focusing group is that that there isn't a specific outcome that is sought, or if there is one, that there's something that supersedes it. Like maybe we have the outcome of learning about groups that we're all seeking, but there's something even more important than that, which is some organic unfolding that we don't know where it will lead yet. That's more important than the specific thing that we say we want as an outcome. I think that's a particularly focusing idea of emergence and organic growth. And we're growing. I just want to say one more thing and then I'll let you go. A focusing orientation is that we're growing the us. We're developing the us as it wants to be developed, not as I, the facilitator, want to make you be this. You know, I give birth to a group and then the group is itself, like having a baby, and then it grows in the way it wants to grow. But the principle is that as we grow as the us, then the individuals within the us grow. So that's a principle that I want you to get from this course.